Excel Chapter 5, pages 287 through 289. On 287, you need to read about refreshing a pivot table. You cannot change data directly in the pivot table. You actually have to edit the Excel file and then refresh or update the pivot table. So make sure you read that. And then we just have one step at the bottom of page 287 to update the art objects table. Switch to the art collection worksheet. Find the Kreidler Dancing in the Light Art ID 73 record. Flip to page 288. Click the record's appraised value cell. Now, one of the things I like to do to ensure I get the right record is I highlight the whole thing. And then when I click on the appraised value cell, I know that I'm in the right row. Enter 4,000 and press your enter key. Switch to the appraised value summary worksheet. Alright, so we changed this value and we're going to go back to our pivot table, the appraised value summary worksheet. The appraised value totals in the East Pavilion are still 606,414, 135,225, and 3,350 respectively. The pivot table is not updated when the data in the source table is updated, so you need to refresh the pivot table manually. Click on any cell in the pivot table. Step number 5. Click the Pivot Table Tools Option tab. Then click the Refresh button in the Data group. Data group, refresh. The pivot table report is updated. The appraised value totals are now 609,414, 138,225, and 63,350. So when we changed that record, we changed the grand total, we changed the sculpture total, and we changed the fair total. Okay, now in the show group, click the field list button and then read the information about grouping pivot table items. And we are going to go to the bottom of page 288 to create a pivot table based on the data acquired field. Switch to the art collection worksheet and then click any cell in the Excel table. The table is now active. Top of page 289, step number 2, click the Insert tab and then click the Pivot Table button in the Tables group. The Create Pivot Table dialog box opens. Number 3, verify that the table range box shows art objects and the new worksheet option button is selected, and then click OK. The pivot table report area and the pivot table field list appear in a new worksheet. In the pivot table field list, click the Date Acquired checkbox. The Date Acquired field appears in the Row Labels box. Each unique date appears in the pivot table report area. Mary wants each year to appear as a row label. You'll correct that shortly. 5. In the pivot table field list, click the Art ID checkbox. The sum of Art ID appears in the Values box in the Layout area. Because the Art ID field contains numeric data, Alright, let's finish this off on the bottom of page 289 to count the number of objects in each group. Number 1. Click any value in the Sum of Art ID column. Then click the Pivot Table Tools Options tab. In the click the Calculations button arrow. Alright, grab your pencil, and on the bottom of page 289 in step number 2, you see where it says click the Calculations button arrow? This should say in the Calculations group. Click Calculations group. Click the Summarize Values By button. So make sure you go ahead and make that correction in your textbook. Even though you're giving this textbook back, if this is a rented textbook, borrowed textbook, whatever, this is an error. So the next student needs to know it. So in number 2 it says click the Calculations button arrow, cross out button arrow, and write in the word group. It's in that group. If you want to know the truth, you could get rid of click and write in the Calculations group. Click the Summarize Values By button, and then we click Count. The label indicating the type of summary in the pivot table changes to Count of Art ID, and the pivot table report displays the number of art objects acquired by date. See Figure 5-51 on the next page. Alright, go ahead and click Save, and we're going to move on to the next video.